Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Unpacking the Evolving RPA Market and Software Offerings, Insights from our RPA Peak Matrix Assessment. As Connie mentioned, my name is Alan Wolf. I'll be your moderator today. Let me start off by answering the question that's on everyone's mind, and that is, yes, within the next 2 days, you will all get copies of today's slides. I will bring that up again at the end, but that seems to be always the most popular question. So let me introduce our speakers for today. First going to start with Amar Modi. Amar is a member of the Service Optimization Technologies team at Everest Group and assists clients on topics related to technologies such as RPA and artificial intelligence that are disrupting the way global services are being delivered. Prior to joining Everest Group, Amar was a business analyst with Deloitte, and he holds a bachelor's degree in technology from the Indian Institute of Technology at Bombay. Our other presenter today is Sarah Burnett. Sarah is a well-known industry analyst and market influencer, and she's vice president at Everest Group, where she leads our Service Optimization Technologies research program globally. As part of this, she researches and advises clients on automation technologies such as RPA, AI, and global service providers' capabilities in this field. A couple of Sarah's accolades include she was named one of the 50 most influential women in UK IT by Computer Weekly. She's also, in 2016, she was named an outsourcing A-lister by the Global Sourcing Association. And in 2017, Sarah was named a Digital Leaders Champion for the UK Southeast. So when you see of everything that Sarah and Amar have accomplished, and you compare that with my main accomplishment, which is I've seen the movie Titanic 25 times, I think you're all in pretty good shape with Sarah and Amar leading our discussions. So let's talk a little bit today about what we're going to cover. Our webinar today is focused on the latest RPA research findings from our RPA product matrix study. This study took over 6 months to research and produce. We're going to continue by sharing key characteristics of what we believe to be an enterprise-grade RPA product and the highest rated features by enterprises. We'll share some trends and evolution of the RPA technologies and what this all means for enterprises going forward. And then finally, we're going to take out our crystal ball and talk about some of our predictions for RPA in the coming years. And as Connie mentioned also, we will have a Q&A time. The good news is today, if you have any questions, we also have someone answering your questions in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Some we may wait for the Q&A, and we will do our best to get to everyone. Please have a little patience as we have a very large number of people on today's webinar. So with that, why don't we start off, and Amar, let me ask you the first question, and just could you take us through the background to the research methodology and results of our Peak Matrix assessment?
Sure, thanks, Alan. Hi, everyone. Everest Group RPA Product Peak Matrix Assessment is based on a comprehensive research exercise including various proprietary sources of information and ongoing research. As you can see, these include proprietary database of 18 leading RPA technology vendors. The database tracks their offerings, product features and functionalities, partnerships with service providers and other technology vendors, commercial models, portfolio mix across industry, geography, process areas, and buyer size, vendor performance in terms of revenue and clients, and other operational capabilities. Next is detailed product demonstrations, interviews, and executive-level discussions with vendors. Next is interviews with technology vendors, reference clients, and other enterprises to get the buyer feedback and perspectives. And lastly, our proprietary database of RPA and AI capabilities of many major service providers and executive-level discussions with them that complements the research. The lower half of the slide lists the various RPA technology vendors that were assessed in this study. Moving to our next slide, we did a relative assessment of the vendors across two key dimensions: vision and capability along the x-axis and market impact along the y-axis, using Everest Group's proprietary framework, the product peak matrix. Vision and capability is assessed across five key sub-dimensions. These are vision and strategy, development and integration, deployment and maintenance, product training and support, and progressiveness, flexibility, and client adoption of available commercial models. The y-axis, which is a market impact, is assessed across three key sub-dimensions. The first one is market success, which is based on revenue base, number of clients, and year-over-year growth. The second one is portfolio mix, which is a measure of breadth of coverage of industries, geographies, process areas, use cases, and enterprise size class. And the third one is value delivered, which is a measure of the value delivered to the clients and their satisfaction with the product, as well as the support, which is based on the client feedback. The vendors are classified into three categories of leaders, major contenders, and aspirants. We have also awarded star performer rating to 4 vendors with the strongest relative year-over-year movement on the peak matrix across both dimensions. We are seeing a lot of competition in the market, and the gap between the various vendors are closing fast. While the leaders have a dominant overall position, several major contenders, especially the ones closer to the leader box, are giving a tough competition to them. And we are also seeing some very promising aspirants which are catching up fast with other players in the market. Moving to our next slide. Now, when we have a look at the state of customer satisfaction with RPA technology vendors based on feedback collected from a total of 49 enterprise clients of these vendors, I have good news and great news. Our findings show high overall customer satisfaction with RPA technology vendors among their RPA enterprise clients. If you look at the lower end of the spectrum, while vendors on one end of the spectrum enjoy great overall customer satisfaction, the satisfaction levels with the vendors on the other end of the spectrum is also quite good, and hence good news and great news. The fact that clients, on an average, have good customer satisfaction with the objectives or drivers behind RPA adoption asserts that reality is quite close to the hype around the potential of RPA. However, there is much scope for some vendors to improve customer satisfaction, especially with their product vision and roadmap and RPA capability. Well, now I would like to hand it over to Sarah to share insights on the market adoption patterns.
Thank you, Amar and Alan. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome from me to the webinar as well. Let's take a look at the market for third-party RPA software. As you can see on this slide, the market is growing fast at around 70 to 90% per annum. This is very strong. This isn't something you often see in the technology sector. And this is based on the revenues of the 18 RPA vendors that took part in our peak matrix assessment, projected out onto the bigger market. They're all growing really well, but some more than others, with outstanding growth rates of several 100%. High-profile case studies that show successful RPA deployments and returns on investment are helping drive the market, in addition to tactical needs for automating processes. And this is the organization's ongoing drive for efficiency continues. I'm sure you will have seen some of these case studies in the market yourself. If we go on to the next slide, you will see here that North America is the largest RPA market. Let's start with that chart on the left-hand side, which is the market split by geography. Adoption continues to be high in America. It has been high for some time. It's always been leading. And this is largely driven by the BFSI sector, the banking, financial services and insurance sector. That is heavily regulated. There's a lot of legacy software as well. All of these are driving the market in the US. But it's not limited just to the BFSI sector. The US as a whole, North America as a whole, has been quick to adopt new technologies, and also they are very advanced in outsourcing as well. And this is something which is basically another lever for introducing efficiency. Similar to the US, the United Kingdom is also a large market for RPA. It's really where RPA was born. And what we see is the same drivers that are driving the market in America are operating in the UK as well. So, again, the BFSI sector, the legacy transformation, the outsourcing maturity, etc. Catching up from a late start, companies in continental Europe are also adopting RPA. In particular, we're seeing growth in certain function requirements such as F&A, finance and accounting. In this area, continental Europe's growth in adoption is actually outpacing the UK, which is an interesting development in its own right. We have loads more data on this for anybody who's interested. Other areas are also active. We've seen Asia Pacific come on strongly recently. We've seen some huge wins for vendors in Japan and China as well. Now let's look at the industry side. If we look at the charts on the right-hand side, I've already really covered the BFSI sector, which represents about 38% of the market. We have been doing this assessment, this study for 3-4 years now, and the BFSI sector has always come out as the top adopter of RPA technologies. Close to that is not completely close, but next to that is telecoms and media. And of course, the two sectors have very highly transactional, very high volume transactional processes as well. And being telecom and media, they're used to using the latest technologies. So the whole culture of the two sectors really lends itself well to adopting RPA. On the other hand, we also see healthcare and pharma growing well. Again, highly transactional, also very heavily regulated. So it's wherever there is this overhead of regulatory requirements that we see a bump in adoption of RPA as well. I don't think I need to say much about the retail sector, given e-commerce, digital transformation, given self-service channels. It's really a no-brainer to minimize manual work and increase the level of automation. Our next slide, I believe, brings us to the poll, Alan.
Excellent. So here's our first poll. We'd like everyone to participate. This will give us a good feel for their position and engagement with RPA. So this first question, for those of you currently utilizing RPA within your organization, what processes have you automated the most with it? And feel free to select all that applies. So the choices are industry-specific processes, contact center, finance and accounting, human resources, procurement, web-based processes, IT processes, or other processes as well. So if you can just submit your votes, we'll give everyone a little more time to vote. And I know it makes Sarah and Amar very happy when we have a high percentage of people voting. So let's try to make Sarah and Amar happy. Why don't we give it about 5 more seconds? And 3, 2, and 1, and close the poll. Now, while we're tabulating the poll results, Sarah, let me ask you a question. On the previous slide, you were sharing the industries and geographies that are ahead or behind, as you will. Do you think that's going to stay consistent or do you see certain geographies or industries catching up to greater adoption?
I think they are catching up. I think that sort of the leading geographies and leading sectors are often the ones that lead in adoption of new technologies. And what we're seeing now is really others also catching up. So I think there's a common factor that is highly transactional processes, high volume and highly transactional. There's also the regulatory compliance element. And, some of these sectors have huge legacy estate as well, and they have to manage those. And with RPA providing kind of non-invasive integration is particularly useful when it comes to organizations that have legacy solutions. Those are the sort of common factors, I believe, yeah.
Okay. So now we have the results of the poll. Thanks to everyone for voting. And you can see it's fairly spread out, but the big one was F&A, followed by industry-specific processes and then IT processes. So let me ask the question, Sarah, how do those results compare with Everest Group's assessment of the RPA market?
Well, those are very interesting results. If we go to the next slide, you'll see what we have found based on our ongoing research. So there is a difference in that we have found that industry-specific is by far the biggest area where RPA is being applied. And these are areas such as claims processing, insurance, policy servicing and reporting as well. In banking, you have card activation and in all financial services, sort of fraud, claims discovery, and so on. Then F&A, and that's not at all surprising. This really chimes with the results that we've just seen from the audience. So this is where F&A is highly transactional as well, or at least the transactional part of F&A lends itself very well to RPA and automation. So in areas such as general ledger and reporting, accounts receivable and cash management, accounts payable and expenses reporting. Interestingly, we also see RPA applied in customer contact centers. Basically, there is this kind of assisted and unassisted applications of RPA, where it is used in a kind of assisted or semi-automated. It's ideal to help agents in contact centers. And, for example, when somebody reports a change of address, it's very easy for a contact center agent to click a button and get an RPA robot to propagate that change of address across multiple systems. But I believe, you could also do these things in batch format in the back office, in the with unattended automations as well. And as time goes by, I think we'll see more applications of a combination of RPA and cognitive technologies in the contact center. IT services, which was rated highly here in the poll, is there as well. In the bigger picture, we see that at about 5% of the market. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. And here, I would like to change tack a bit. Basically, what we have seen until now is what Amardeep talked about, which was the various dimensions that we use for assessing RPA software for our peak matrix. These are dimensions that we came up with when we were setting up the framework for assessing. And then we also wanted to find out from enterprises what it was that they valued in RPA software. And so I'm going to share some of the findings from another piece of research that will be published shortly on enterprise-grade RPA. So the key characteristics and how enterprises that use RPA rate these characteristics. So let's go on to the next slide. You'll find these 5 dimensions that you see on the screen are very close to the framework that we set up for the peak matrix. So to do a survey and interview enterprises, we needed to have a hypothesis and to test that hypothesis. So we based that on our framework, and we came up with these 5 major dimensions, and then within each there are sub-dimensions, and I'll share some of those with you. I'm sure you'll find this useful because it talks about some key characteristics. And for those of you who are new to RPA, these are the kind of features that other enterprises value. And so I encourage you to download the report when it is published. To do this, we surveyed 72 enterprises that already had RPA. We also interviewed many of them. It wasn't just a survey. And the key dimensions are ease of coding and robot development. So this includes features such as having drag and drop features for creating automations, creating those robots, managing security and risk, so features that enable you to ensure security and mitigate risk, software quality and robot maintenance features. So I'll delve into that a bit deeper in a moment. Ease of deployment and scalability. So how easy is it to deploy, schedule, and run robots? How easy is it to scale the deployment? And then not to forget complementary features, features that aren't necessarily part of RPA, but they extend its capabilities and provide additional scope for automation. So these include things like operational analytics. They include process mining, workflow or orchestration, and also features such as artificial intelligence. Last but not least, very important to many organizations to be able to automate processes that are that include unstructured content. And we mustn't forget that AI is being used now to also enhance the functionality of RPA products. So that brings me to the next poll. Alan, over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, we have another poll. The poll question for this poll is, which of the following do you consider to be the most important capability in an enterprise-grade RPA product? Is it ease of coding and robot development, ease of deployment and scalability, software quality and robot maintenance features, security and risk management, or complementary features such as cognitive AI, BPM, or analytics? So once again, which of the following do you consider to be the most important capability in an enterprise-grade RPA product? Ease of coding and robot development, ease of deployment and scalability, software quality and robot maintenance features, security and risk management, and complementary features are your choices. So if everyone can vote, that would be great. And we will keep the poll open for another 7 seconds this time. And 5, 3, 2, 1. Why don't we close the poll? And while we're tabulating those results, Sarah, just for clarification, what does Everest Group mean by enterprise-grade RPA product?
Well, that's a very good question. Software has to be of good quality for all, but it's just that enterprises have requirements such as being able to process high volumes of transactions and being able to scale and then manage those very large deployments. So they do require features such as the ability to maintain the robots, to upgrade them, to have things tie in with the bigger IT services requirements such as upgrading enterprise software. So it's just that, enterprises do things on large scale and they do need features that support them in those deployments.
Gotcha. So not talking about the robot that will vacuum my rugs at home.
Right.
Okay. So now let's look at the results. So we have a big winner of ease of deployment and scalability, had 43% of the vote. Ease of coding and software quality came both kind of tied for second. So I'm going to ask you the same question. Sarah, how do these results compare with what you've been seeing in our research?
Well, I would say, let me just take another look. I would say the top three match our top three, although in a slightly different order. So I'm very glad to see there is agreement, consensus on the top three. So we go to the next slide. You'll see that the 72 enterprises that had already deployed RPA gave us slightly different answers in terms of the importance of each of these features or groups of features. So 81% thought software quality and robot maintenance features were the most important. And security was very high up on priorities as well. Unsurprisingly, many BFSI sector participants rated this very highly. Again, not surprising given their importance of security of data and also access to banking services. Ease of deployment and scalability was also rated highly at 72%. So the top three are equally important and they compare well with what we've got from the delegates today. Let's move on to the next slide and I'll give you a bit more breakdown of the sub-dimensions. So what do we mean by software quality? Well, bug-free and seamlessly integrated. You might say enterprise solutions don't have bugs, but of course that's not true. We all know they do have bugs. The important thing is that the different components of the solution should be seamlessly integrated. And this really matters to enterprises. We have heard from them where, for example, they may be a component that was developed later or an older version of a component doesn't work seamlessly with a new release of the software. These are the kind of things that provide, create headaches for enterprises. Reliability and accuracy is important, particularly when it comes to identifying objects from the user interface on the screen. 84% rated that very highly. Session logs, errors logs and debugging, and of course audit trails. Web-based interfaces for monitoring robots and the runtime environment. We go on to the next slide. Here we'll see the importance of security and risk management features. So here again, we see the need for robust logging of robot activity. Then an audit trail. We see adherence to security standards, particularly where there is, for example, any kind of regulatory requirements within which there are security requirements as well. Credentials vault, that gets the thumbs up. Role-based access controls, all the typical security features that we see in other enterprise solutions as well. To go on to the next slide, we see here ease of deployment. So this is about being able to schedule, queue, and do other robot management features. This is where we're seeing some development and evolution as well with additional features such as dynamic scheduling and prioritization. Amadit will go into those in more detail. Caching of operational information in case you need those for recovery, if the robot breaks down and you want to pick up the process where you left off. A central application server that can run unattended, and also features for scaling up. We've put in a second application server. This would be required indeed for very, very large deployments. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. And I believe that's back to you, Alan.
Okay, so let me ask a question, Amar, as a transition here. We've spent the last several minutes and slides talking about our peak dimensions and what enterprises prefer, what's important to them. So why don't we flip the discussion and talk a little bit now about what the vendors are doing. So could you share your thoughts on that from a vendor perspective?
Sure. Thanks, Alan. Okay, so moving to the next slide. RPA solutions continue to evolve with a host of capabilities to help enterprises achieve strategic business outcomes. And we have identified several evolving RPA technology trends from our research, and I would be talking about some of these today. The first one that I'm going to talk about is computer vision. It refers to the use of artificial intelligence to enable automatic extraction, analysis, and understanding of useful information from digital images. Its application in the RPA domain includes intelligently identifying objects from their images in environments such as Citrix, where object IDs are not available, and in use cases that involve processing unstructured documents such as scanned invoices. The second one is workflow and process orchestration, and we are seeing continuous evolution and integration of advanced workflow and orchestration capabilities with RPA. This, we believe, is to enable better management and orchestration of end-to-end processes, including manual systems and robot tasks such as from a centralized interface. It also enables advanced human-in-the-loop exception handling, where exceptions are routed to available agents to be handled in near real time and then resume the workflow afterwards. The third one is library of pre-built automations and robot stores. Pre-built automations are reusable components that are generally offered as out-of-the-box or charged separately. Enterprises can use them across a variety of processes for faster implementation. Several RPA technology vendors are investing in such libraries by themselves or through their partners to offer enhanced value proposition for enterprises and ease the implementation. Moving to the next slide. The fourth one that I'm going to talk about is very interesting. It's the self-healing systems. And now this refers to the ability of RPA robots to learn from the exceptions that agents handle manually and develop the capability to fix those exceptions automatically over time and hence minimize the extent of manual intervention over time. The fifth one is intelligent workload balancing. RPA platforms with such capability would use machine learning and advanced analytics to analyze the work distribution patterns and learn to automatically identify high priority tasks. And when it sees a resource crunch based on the identified task priorities, it would assign the most critical tasks to the available robots and minimize the impact of resource scarcity. The sixth one is process mining and automation recommendations. The automation recommender leverages desktop analytics or process mining to identify and prioritize opportunities for automating manual tasks in business processes, which can assist enterprises in selecting the processes suitable for automation and quickly scaling up RPA deployments and increase automation rates in processes. The next one is auto-scaling of robots, and it refers to RPA platforms' capability to scale the number of robots up or down to meet the variable processing demand almost instantly. Now, it can be done for both server or cloud-based deployments. In server deployments, the scalability would be limited by the server capacity, whereas in cloud deployments, almost infinite scalability can be achieved. The next one is SLA-based automation, and it monitors the processes based on predefined service level agreements and prioritizes queues depending on the workload to meet critical SLAs. It could forecast any gaps in meeting critical SLAs with the available robots due to increased workload, as well as indicate the number of additional robots needed to meet all critical SLAs. The final one that I'm going to talk about today is human in the loop. It provides a user interface to enable an unattended robot to communicate with a human agent in almost real time to exchange information or manage exceptions while it waits for the actions to be performed by the human agent. Now, apart from these, there are a few other very interesting RPA technology trends that you will find in our RPA peak matrix report. Now, moving to the next slide. So we see that RPA is thus evolving from being a tactical solution to a more strategic one, driven by continuous product innovation. The advances in RPA technologies could be best described by viewing them in terms of multiple product generations. The first generation is what we call assisted RPA. RPA robots of this generation work alongside human workers as assistants by doing partial automations of some of their tasks. Workers are made more productive but aren't replaced. RPA robots are typically integrated with human workers' desktops to automate some of their desktop-related operations, such as form filling, extracting data to or from files, or various desktop tools for manipulation by other applications, and guiding the workers through the process steps. As the workers aren't replaced and the robots run on physical desktops, this generation of RPA has very limited scalability and cost savings. These limitations were significantly resolved in the next generation, that is unattended RPA. Here, robots moved beyond being mere assistants to virtual workers mimicking human actions to execute low-level rules-based tasks end-to-end, requiring human involvement only to manage exceptions. Now, unlike first-generation RPA, the robots were deployed on virtual machines instead of physical desktops, enabling creation of virtual workers that can be easily scaled to work across the organization. This generation of RPA was marked by significant product innovation and addition of features such as scheduling and queuing to enable work orchestration, centralized robot management, and control, real-time monitoring of robot performance, and rules-based access control. With a virtual worker being easy to scale and typically being equivalent to be able to do work of 2 to 3 FTEs, unassisted RPA offered a strong business case and potential to disrupt the way global services were delivered. However, there were some limitations with this generation of RPA as well, since most of the deployments in this generation were server-based. Scalability was often limited by server capacity. Robots were more prone to errors due to changes in screen or underlying applications, less adaptable to seasonal peaks in demand, and required more human intervention for robot management and control. These limitations were significantly resolved in the next or the third generation, that is autonomous RPA. This generation is marked by more autonomous functioning of robots with addition of features for auto-scaling and dynamic workload balancing, enabling the robots to dynamically distribute workload among themselves and scale up or down automatically to almost instantly adjust to demands of process systems. Robots of this generation are also more context aware, which enable them to be more adaptable to changes in screen or underlying systems. This RPA generation has more cloud-friendly deployment architecture, rendering itself to be offered as software as a service and enabling the creation of virtual workforce, which is almost infinitely scalable, more flexible, and more adaptable. As we continue to progress from the second generation to the third generation, we are also seeing increasing verticalization of RPA solutions and emergence of accelerated robotic automation which comes with the process knowledge and using various libraries of pre-built automation. Other advances include multi-tenancy, and expanding libraries of such, pre-built automations, pre-built connectors, and advanced analytics and workflow integration. However, this generation of RPA solution is limited to processing structured and semi-structured data. With continuous advances in the AI space, we are seeing RPA, gradually progressing to the next generation, that is cognitive RPA, or RPA 4.0. This generation is marked by continuous expansion of RPA capabilities with the use of AI technologies such as machine learning, natural language processing, and computer vision to enable more advanced processing of unstructured data, predictive and prescriptive analytics, and diagnostic, self-managing, and self-healing robots.
Great.
Now, moving to the next slide.
Let's go to the next slide because that's a lot. So obviously the question is, what do all these advances in RPA technologies, what do they actually mean for enterprises? Right.
Now that we have a view of the advances in RPA solutions, right? Very good question, Alan. And, this is what I'm going to cover now, that what all these advances mean for enterprises. First would be faster and easier identification, implementation, and rollout of RPA use cases at lower cost with capabilities such as, AI, ML, and analytics-based process mining and automation recommendations. A more user-friendly and interactive interface for robot configuration, libraries of plug-and-play, and reusable function-specific automations. Second would be, moving to the next slide, second would be enterprise-grade scalability. Advances in RPA are enabling enterprises to create almost infinitely scalable and very elastic virtual workforce capacity to work across the organization and adaptable to seasonal or unpredicted peaks and demands. Moving to the next slide, third would be easier control and maintenance and lower cost of running automated operations owing to higher resilience to system changes with advances in computer vision technologies and its integration with RPA products, optimal utilization of virtual workforce with intelligent workload balancing and usage or utility-based pricing, savings and running and maintenance costs with self-managed and self-healing robots. Fourth one would be higher automation potential and lower exception handling with increasing infusion of cognitive technologies in RPA, and this is covered in the next slide, slide number 26. Moving forward, the fifth one would be virtualization of infrastructure owing to an increasing shift from physical hardware and servers to cloud-based virtual machines, and allowing enterprises to enjoy all the benefits of cloud infrastructure, such as built-in disaster recovery and lower risk of data loss. And the last but not least would be business intelligence owing to RPA meeting advanced analytics. Rich process-level data generated by RPA are fed into integrated advanced analytics engines to develop actionable insights to support organizations in making strategic decisions and identifying gaps in existing processes to drive process optimization.
Great.
So now I'll hand it over to Sarah to take you through the next few sections here.
Right. And so Sarah, let's take out the crystal ball as we talked about, and can you share with us just what are your predictions or Everest's predictions for the coming years in this ever-changing market?
Thanks, Alan. Yes, I'll take you through those. I'm going to go through this reasonably fast, so there's time for us to take some questions as well, if that's okay. The great thing here is that we've been making predictions about 2017, 19, and even prior to that for the previous 2 years. And it's good to see that our predictions are coming true. As an analyst, this is always a great thing to see. So we've been talking about RPA technologies having increasing levels of intelligence. You heard from Amar's presentation that we're seeing increasing levels of intelligence built into RPA, not just to extend the scope of automation, but also to make RPA work better. We have also predicted rising numbers of partnerships. That's certainly come true. Not only have we seen partnerships with global services providers, but also with technology platform vendors as well, and also professional services and service system integration partners. New pricing models. Here, what we've seen is progressive pricing models kicking in. So we originally had perpetual licensing changed to annual licensing. Now we are seeing the emergence of usage-based utility-style pricing coming in as well. Verticalization, really this section should say verticalization and function-specific. We were predicting both. We are beginning to see this. It's more about reusability and not having to code everything from scratch for things that are common across enterprises. And here we've seen the emergence of marketplaces for parts of robots that are pre-developed. And the vertical aspect of it, I think, is still in its infancy, but it's starting to appear as well. The platform model will bring in more capabilities. So going back to those partnerships, we talked about partnerships with technology vendors. So we've seen BPMS, for example, BPM partnerships and workflow and AI as well, AI partnerships forming here. Market growth in more geographies. I've already spoken about that, how other geographies are catching up. Amar, do you have anything quick just to add to the initial set of predictions?
Sure. Thanks, Sarah. I would just, add a few points to pricing models. And, while fixed capacity-based pricing, where RPA is priced, per software robot license is the predominant pricing model, advances in RPA technologies and increasing market maturity are fueling the rise of more progressive and output-based pricing models, such as users-based and utility-based. Some variations to these, such as gain shares, are also emerging. While the current adoption of such models is low, as the market matures, demand and adoption of such models will accelerate, and this will become a more prominent competitive frontier for RPA. For the platform model, I think you kind of covered the points fairly comprehensively, Sarah. That we are going to see more of these platform-based approach and vendors bringing in more capabilities from their partners in coming years.
Thank you very much. We are to carry on with the rest of the predictions. We expect to see more enhancement. We've already seen a huge number of enhancements in RPA control and management capabilities. We've only really, this is just the beginning. I believe we'll see a lot more. Amar again shared with you some of the AI-enabled capabilities in that area, such as reprioritization on the fly, and we've seen other things as well, such as intelligent workload balancing. The market will be increasingly driven by regulatory requirements. GDPR is at the top of mind at the moment, with a lot of additional overhead of handling and managing data, personal data. Brexit will in turn add some demand, because depending on what the UK negotiates with the EU, we're likely to see additional requirements for example, trade across borders. So a lot of form filling, a lot of administrative overhead there as well. We have seen significant investment in RPA firms. You will have seen some of the big headline-grabbing announcements. This is set to continue. And finally, the emergence of more RPA vendors. One year, I think the year before last, we assessed 10 RPA vendors. Several vendors that we weren't aware of came forward and told us about themselves, and we looked at them and decided to include them. After some initial assessments, we decided to include them in our 2018 RPA peak. Since publishing the RPA peak, which this year included 18, we've been approached by several other companies as well. So we'll be looking at those, pre-assessing them for inclusion in the next. But, we may well also see some consolidation in the market as well. I'm going to stop there, and over to you, Alan.
Great. Well, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Amar. This has been great. I hope everyone has enjoyed it. Please stay on for our Q&A. I will be very quick. Let me once again announce that we will be sending out a link to this webinar and all of the slides. So if you have participated in today's webinar, you will get a copy of all these slides. With that, one of the questions we always get asked is, great, this has been 50 minutes of content, but there's so much more, so many more questions. How can we continue to help you? So there are a number of ways. Obviously, just a content and interactions, please join us for future webinars, and you could get complimentary reports. Obviously, we have a number of memberships that we could work with you to continue understanding what is happening in this ever-changing market. And then there's also additional decision support and advisory expertise that we offer in these areas, and obviously others concerning the entire market. So with that, what we'd like to do now is take the last few minutes and do some Q&A. Now, as I mentioned, we had an incredibly large number of people on today's webinar. We are bursting at the seams. So we unfortunately will not be able to, on this call, get to everyone's question, but we have captured all the questions, and we will respond back to everyone who has asked a question. Also, you can see on the screen, too, if you would like to reach out to me, feel free to email me or Sarah or Mar, and we will also do our best to answer your questions as well. So why don't we start out with the first question here, and there's been a number of questions come in, but Sarah, why don't we start with this one? What do you see? This comes from Puneet, and what do you see trending? Companies setting up their own center of excellence for RPA, or are they allowing consulting and IT companies to drive projects? What's your take on that?
So it's a very good question. We are, in fact, seeing a combination of those. So definitely enterprises are involving consulting firms and system integrators and service providers in the setup of their centers of excellence. And in fact, one of our studies, the RPA Enterprise Pinnacle study, has found that those that involve, work more and sort of bring in the skills actually do benefit from that in the longer term. And so what we are seeing is a mixture of the two. Both formats really work.
Sounds good. Okay, this next question is from Elizabeth. And Amar, what do you see as the key factors for successful RPA adoption to get the most benefits from that?
Sure, that is a great question, and some of the key success factors would be striking a right balance between automating processes, and simplifying and re-engineering processes before RPA implementation, defining specific metrics to measure RPA performance, making IT an end-to-end partner in RPA implementation, continue to increase scale, scope, and speed of RPA adoption, as these are critical to derive maximum impact from RPA. Also, develop internal capabilities and create RPA Center of Excellence to establish an effective governance structure and share skills and capabilities. Also, they should be focused on developing and sharing reusable automation assets, and enterprises should continue to leverage, AI, cognitive, BPM, and advanced analytics to achieve higher automation rates and end-to-end process orchestration.
Great. The next question we have, Sarah. This comes from Aveen, and he's asking, do you see RPA deployments being done on cloud environments instead of on-premise?
Yes, we are seeing some a move. There is a move towards adopting RPA on the cloud. We have some vendors that are cloud specific, they're software as a service providers, and they're growing very well. So there's definitely demand. I would say the majority is still on premise, but there is, we do see deployments on cloud as well.
Great. Okay. Well, Sarah and Amar, I want to thank you. I want to thank all our participants. We are at the end of our 60 minutes, and we want to respect everyone's time. Just very quickly, going on, if you want to check out our latest blogs for additional perspectives on our global services market, we write a lot. You can see a lot of information. And then also, we've also published a number of recent SOT research, and you can see here are some of the topics. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you will join us for our next webinar on May 22nd for Market Vista, covering some of the overviews of our market sizing. And we thank you again. Have a wonderful day, and we hope to hear from you all very soon. Thank you, everyone.